So first thing we want to look at is what is the big struggle with regard to information that every affiliate owner struggles with inside of the affiliate every single day. Ultimately, I struggle with all the same things that you guys do with regard to what am I supposed to be doing every single day that's going to drive the affiliate forward? And then I have to ask myself, why am I not doing those things? When we look at why affiliate owners struggle with information, it's typically because of one or more of these three reasons. Number one, they just can't find it. So inside of your member management software, you just may not know where to look. You may not know where that particular report goes, what that dashboard is actually telling you. Now, let's say that you do know where to look, and maybe you're looking at that thing and you just don't understand what that information tells you. You don't understand what the percentage of attendance means and how that's good or bad. Maybe you don't really understand how to calculate lifetime value or length of engagement, and is that number actually accurate? Because there's a lot of ways you can calculate leg and over what time frame and who's included in those metrics. And then thinking about, let's just say that you did know where to find it and then you did know something about it, but then ultimately you can't take the last step, which is what are you supposed to do about it? And this is the key one. So if you can get through the first two, but you still don't know what to do with that information, then this is just as good as not knowing the information at all. So we're going to walk through how to solve all three of these, where to find it, how to understand it, and then ultimately what you should be doing about it. Because at the end of the day, action items are what put us into movement, and motion is what actually builds momentum inside of the affiliate for both you and your team. Okay, so the first framing that we're going to talk about is this idea of lead versus lag. First and foremost, what do those mean? So when we're talking about lead versus lag, really we're simply just saying is that there's a difference between information that is going to predict the future and then information that is historical in nature. Again, both of these are necessary to operate a business, and you should know how to interpret both of those. Now, the way you're going to interact with these pieces of information is going to be very, very different. But just to lay the groundwork, lead is going to tell me what's going to happen coming up. Historical is what happened, or lag is what's historical and what happened in the past. Again, now if you want to think about a big funnel, right? So the top of this funnel, effectively what we're doing is we're just going to be dumping a bunch of lead metrics into this funnel. Now, what I want to make sure is that those lead metrics pop out the appropriate lag metrics at the bottom that allow me to drive the business forward. So the things that I want to put in there, I want to drive the things that I want to happen when I'm thinking about lead versus lag. Again, there are endless number of metrics that you can track inside of any business. We want to make sure that we are tracking the right numbers, and we want to shift away from primarily focusing on lag metrics. We want to move towards lead. So in most member management softwares, you're going to be opening up a dashboard of some sort, and it's going to give you a bunch of metrics, right? And by and large, most of these are going to be lag in nature. Again, we're not poo-pooing on lag metrics. They're important. You need to know them. But when I look at them, you're largely going to be looking at things like last month's revenue, length of engagement, attendance from last month. All of these things are very important, but they don't fundamentally answer the question, what should I do today, right? And there's also nothing I can do about those metrics anymore. Like, those things are done. They can no longer be impacted. They're done. They're in the books, written in stone. Now, I want to start tracking things that allow me to drive the outcomes that I'm looking for. And this is why we want to shift primary focus away from lead to lag, right? So again, lag is like driving your car, looking in the rearview mirror. Lead is like looking through the windshield, seeing what's coming up so that you can react quickly. Because I know if I'm focusing on the right lead metrics with strong confidence, I can predict what my lag metrics are going to be in 1 month, 3 months, 6 months from now. And then I promise you, as an affiliate owner, if you know that information, you're going to sleep much better at night instead of wondering every single month if you're going to be able to cover payroll, if you're cutting that check, if that for rent, if that's going to bounce or not. All of these things start to go away because you're tracking the right information. And that's what we're going to dive in here today. So to hammer this point home just a little bit more, I saw this diagram recently and I love this diagram because it really paints a good picture of the relationship between lead and lag. So if you think about this kind of teeter-totter and you think about lead on one side and lag on the other side, what we're trying to do is we know that we want these lag metrics to be positive, right? I want my revenue to go up. I want my retention to go up or my churn to go down. I want my length of engagement to increase. What I need to do is I need to figure out the lead metrics, and I need to drive those lead metrics really, really hard in order to bring the lag metrics up in the direction that I want to. And I think this is a really good illustration of the relationship between those two, because it really reinforces that my effort and where I'm putting my time, energy, and resources needs to be primarily over here, because we know if those things are good, we know we're going to get the outcomes that we want. Now, if you wanted to put this in the context of training, so If I just looked at PRs historically, that would tell me some information. But if I wanted to look at what the athlete's daily nutritional routine looked like, what their recovery routine looked like, what was their frequency of training, what type of training that they were doing, all of these things are going to give me a really good indication of what that athlete is going to be accomplishing in the short, medium, and long term with regard to their outcomes. If I start over here with lag metrics and I look at something like lag, which is length of engagement, that is inherently lag in nature, meaning like people have to have been here for some amount of time in order to get that information. Same thing with something like a lifetime value. They have to have been here for some duration of time, whether it be 1 month or 10 years. 90-day retention, by the very nature of that measurement, it's going to be lag in nature. And then if I'm looking at revenue, that's going to be last month's revenue, meaning that happened last month. There's nothing I can do today. That's going to impact that moving forward. Now, if I switch and I talk about lead metrics, I can look at things like attendance, because I know attendance is a good predictor of retention. I can look at churn rate. I can look at PRs. Why is PR a lead metric? If people are not getting results, they're probably not going to stay. I can look at referrals. This is also a good indicator of rate of growth. And then I can look at lead flow. Now, if I think about these different sets of metrics, the main difference between how we look at these and what makes them lead versus lag is the time frame with which we measure them. So when we look at these over here, these are typically measured in a monthly time frame, right? So I look at the previous month, or I look at a monthly reporting, and these are some of the measures that I get. Now, what we typically recommend, and when we help affiliate owners work through this, and we build spreadsheets for everybody and help them track all this stuff, these metrics over here, we really want to look at tracking on a weekly basis. Now, why is this important? Right? So weekly, I hope if I could spell, weekly basis. Now, why? Because I can turn almost anything from a lag to a lead metric. So let me give you guys an example. If I'm looking at a gym, and let's just use revenue. So revenue is over here, and it's currently in a lag metric position. If I tell you that last year, the previous fiscal year, that this gym did 120K in revenue, okay? That is now a lag metric, meaning they made on average $10,000 a month over the course of 12 months, assuming they're on a monthly billing cycle. How would I take something like revenue and turn it into a lead metric? Well, instead of looking at the previous fiscal year, right, I might start tracking things on a monthly or quarterly basis. So let's just say that in Q1, the gym made, call it 25K in Q1. Well, I know that if they did 120,000, that they should have done 30,000 in Q1 versus now they're 5,000 down in revenue. So this now becomes a lead metric for me, because what determines a lead versus a lag metric? Well, meaning fundamentally, if I'm looking at lead versus lag, what I'm looking at is, can I influence the number, right? I cannot influence what happened last year. I can influence what happens with this number moving forward because I've shrunk the time frame with which that I'm looking at it. So if we look at some of these other numbers over here, let's say that you're looking at leads, right? And I know that on a rolling weekly basis, I have 7, 8, 9, 10 leads, and it goes 10 leads, 9 leads, 10 leads, 8 leads, 6 leads, 5 leads. Well, I'm looking at that and I'm saying, oh, what's going on there? Do I need to check the forms on my website? Is traffic just down and I need to have some sort of alternative outbound strategy with regard to, running Bring a Friend Week or doing a reinvigoration campaign to get back old clients? All of those are on the board. But the point is, I'm tracking that number. It is now a lead indicator because I know if my leads are coming down, I'm fundamentally getting less at-bats with regard to making sales, at which point it's going to be harder to beat my churn, even if my churn stays steady. So looking at some of these numbers and shrinking the time frame with which we look at them turns a lag metric into a lead metric. Now, some of them are just inherently lag, but some of them, by just changing the window that we look at the information, what this ends up being is kind of like the difference between going to the doctor once a year and wearing your Whoop every single day. That information on your Whoop, calling about your stress, your sleep, and all these other things, this is now a lead metric versus you go to the doctor once a year and the doctor says you're either sick or you're healthy or you're fit. Okay, well, that's already happened in the past, right? I couldn't do anything about that en route. But if I'm tracking those metrics every single day, I can start to, again, change my behaviors. And the whole purpose of this is to answer that fundamental question of like, what should I be doing today? How should I be interacting with my team and my clients in order to drive the business forward? And understanding the difference between lead and lag, and then fundamentally, how do you turn a lag metric into a lead metric? And then fundamentally, how do I interact with it is a really important concept. So again, this is not set in stone. This is not gospel, but I do think that this is good enough for you guys to understand the concept and then change how you're interacting with the information. Now, with regard to all of this information, there's a ton of different member management softwares out there. You can set almost all of these up to feed you the right information, right? And you can set up custom reports. You can have the information delivered to you in different ways, and we're going to talk about in some of the upcoming models. But again, you can manipulate your member management to give you all this information so that you can interact appropriately.